Hey everyone. I've been lurking here for a while, reading your stories, and honestly, I never thought I'd be writing one of my own. But here I am. I guess I just need to get this off my chest because I feel like I'm losing my mind. A little background. I'm Carter, 36, a trauma surgeon. My wife, Anna, is 34, and we've been married for 11 years. We met in college. She was the artsy, free-spirited girl who brought me out of my shell. I'm the serious type, always planning and focused, but she made life feel alive, you know? At least, that's how it used to be. The past couple of months, though, something's been off. It started small, like barely noticeable stuff that you brush off at first. Anna began dressing a little differently, nicer, more put together. I figured she was just trying to feel good about herself, which I totally support. Then there were her trips to the gym. Again, no big deal at first. She said she wanted to get healthier, and I thought, good for her. But then it became every other day, sometimes more. She started leaving earlier and coming back later, saying she was staying after class to talk with friends or hit the sauna. Her phone habits changed too. She used to leave it lying around the house, totally unconcerned. Lately, though, it's always with her, face down or in her pocket. I told myself it was nothing. After all, I'm not the kind of guy to go snooping through someone's phone. The first time I really noticed something weird was one Sunday morning. I was making pancakes, our little tradition for lazy weekends, and her phone buzzed on the counter. She was upstairs getting ready for brunch with her friend Lauren, so I glanced at it, thinking it might be a message from her. The notification just said, "Can't stop thinking," and it cut off there. The sender was DM. I froze for a second. It felt like one of those moments in a movie where the background music changes. I mean, who the hell is DM? But I didn't pick it up. I felt like even looking was crossing a line. Instead, I just stood there, staring at the phone until she came downstairs. All smiles and looking stunning in this sundress she hadn't worn in forever. She noticed me standing there and said, "What's wrong?" I forced a laugh and said, "Nothing, just distracted." She kissed me on the cheek and went on about how excited she was to catch up with Lauren. At brunch. With Lauren, who, by the way, posted a picture on Instagram that afternoon from a winery 2 hours away. It got worse after that. Anna's workouts started running later. She stopped asking about my day, and when I tried to share, she'd nod distractedly or cut me off. And her laughter started to sound different. It wasn't for me anymore. Then came the night that blew it all wide open. I was supposed to be working late, but a surgery got canceled, so I decided to surprise her with takeout from her favorite Thai place. I pulled into the driveway, and her car wasn't there. That was odd. She hadn't mentioned going out. The house was dark and quiet when I went inside. No music, no candles lit, none of her usual stuff. I called her, but it went to voicemail after 2 rings. I thought, maybe she's just out running errands, and I'm overthinking. So I got back in my car and started driving around. I didn't even know where to go. I just drove, and then I saw it. Her car, parked in a lot near the downtown park. I pulled over, killed the lights, and just sat there for a second. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was going to crack a rib. I spotted her standing near a bench under one of those dim street lights, and she wasn't alone. There was a guy with her, tall, athletic-looking, kind of smirking as he talked to her. They stood close, way too close for just friends. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the way she tilted her head at him, the way he reached out and touched her arm. I didn't get out of the car. I couldn't. She eventually got in her car and left. I sat there for another 10 minutes, just staring at the spot where they'd been. When I got home, she was already back, sitting on the couch like nothing had happened. She looked up and smiled, asking me how my night was. "Fine," I said. And then I went upstairs and shut the door. I feel like I'm living in a bad dream, and I don't know what to do. Am I crazy? Do I confront her? Or do I wait until I know more? If you've been through this, I'd really appreciate your advice. It didn't take long for things to escalate after that night at the park. The next few days felt surreal. Anna carried on like nothing had happened, smiling and laughing, making small talk during dinner. Meanwhile, I felt like I was on the outside looking in, watching someone I thought I knew play a part in a show I wasn't invited to. It was like living with a stranger who wore my wife's face, her voice, her habits, but everything felt off. The warmth was gone. She didn't notice how distant I'd become. Or maybe she did, but she didn't care. She kept acting like we were fine, like nothing had changed. And that killed me more than anything. How could she look me in the eye, tell me she loved me, and then go off to meet him? I decided I needed answers. Real answers. Not the half-truths or deflections she might throw at me if I confronted her too soon. So, yeah, I did the thing I never thought I'd do. I started watching her more closely, paying attention to her habits, her excuses, the way she'd leave her phone face down on the table or suddenly remember work obligations that took her out late. The first crack came on Wednesday. She told me she was heading to yoga, one of those classes she'd been so religious about attending lately. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But that night, something told me to follow her. Call it gut instinct or sheer frustration, but I couldn't let it go. I waited about 10 minutes after she left, and then grabbed my keys. I stayed far enough back that she wouldn't notice me, and honestly, I felt ridiculous. Like, what was I even doing? Was I really that guy now, the husband who tails his own wife? But when she drove past the yoga studio and kept going, my hands tightened on the steering wheel. She didn't stop until she reached this little coffee shop downtown, the kind of place we used to go on Sunday mornings before life got so complicated. She parked in the back, and before I could even think about what to do next, a man walked up to her car. Same guy from the park. He opened her door, and she stepped out, smiling like he'd just told her the funniest joke in the world. It was a smile I hadn't seen in months, and it wasn't meant for me. They went inside together, and I just sat there staring. Part of me wanted to storm in, flip their table, and demand to know what the hell was going on. But another part of me, the part that felt hollow and stunned, froze. I couldn't move. They stayed inside for about an hour. When they came out, they were laughing, walking close. Too close. He touched her lower back as they reached her car, and she didn't move away. That was it for me. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. The next day, I waited until Anna left for work before checking her phone. I know. Believe me, I hated myself for it. I've always been the guy who values trust, who believes in boundaries and respecting each other's privacy. But at this point, the trust was gone. She'd shattered it, and I needed to know the truth. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. There was a thread with someone saved as DM. The messages weren't blatant, but they didn't have to be. Things like, asterisk, last night was perfect. Asterisk, I love how you make me feel. Asterisk, when can I see you again? Asterisk, and then there were pictures. Just a few and nothing explicit, but the way they looked at each other in those photos said everything. I don't remember how long I stood there, staring at the screen. My hands were trembling so badly, I almost dropped the phone. When she came home that night, I couldn't look at her. Every time she smiled at me, it felt like a punch to the gut. How could she sit there and act like everything was fine, knowing what she was doing? Friday rolled around, and she told me she had plans with her coworker Lauren again. Late night? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Probably, she said with a shrug. We're in a new wine bar, and you know how Lauren is, she could talk for hours. I nodded, acting like it was no big deal. But as soon as she left, I grabbed my keys. She wasn't with Lauren. I found her car parked outside a hotel on the edge of town. I didn't need to see her or him to know what was happening. The pieces were all there, the lies, the messages, the late nights. I sat in my car across the street, staring at that stupid building until my vision blurred. My mind kept circling back to everything we'd been through together, every promise we'd made. I thought about the years we'd spent building a life, the dreams we'd shared, and how easily she'd thrown it all away. When she came home later, she smelled like the hotel's generic shampoo. How was your night? I asked, my voice carefully neutral. She launched into some story about Lauren's crazy new boyfriend and how they stayed late talking about red flags. The irony almost made me laugh. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I know some of you will think I'm a coward for that, and maybe you're right. But I needed time to figure out what to say, how to say it. This wasn't just some fight we could fix with an apology. This was betrayal, and I don't know if there's any coming back from that. So now I'm here, sitting in the guest room while she sleeps down the hall, pretending everything's fine. It's not fine. How do you even start a conversation like this? How do you tell the person you loved for over a decade that you know they've been lying to you? I feel like my life is in pieces, and I don't know what to do. If anyone has advice, I'm all ears. Right now, I feel like I'm drowning. I came home from work early because I couldn't focus. My shift was dragging, and every minute felt like a year. I told my boss I wasn't feeling well and headed home, half thinking I'd walk in on something. But the house was empty. Anna's car wasn't in the driveway. I sat in the living room for hours, pacing, replaying everything in my head. The messages, the hotel, the man at the park. By the time she walked in the door, it was like something inside me had snapped. She looked surprised to see me. "Hey," she said, setting her bag down by the door. "What are you doing home? I thought you had a late shift." "I left early," I said. My voice sounded strange, even to me, calm, but with this edge I couldn't hide. She frowned. "Are you okay?" I didn't answer. I just stood there, staring at her. "Carter," she said, her tone shifting. "What's going on? Where were you tonight?" I asked, ignoring her question. Her eyes widened, just slightly, but enough for me to notice. "I told you I was at the gym." "No, you weren't," I said, stepping closer. "I know you weren't at the gym, just like I know you weren't at yoga last week, or brunch with Lauren, or the wine bar." Her face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about you and him," I said, my voice rising now. "I saw you, Anna, at the park, at the coffee shop, at the hotel." For a moment, she didn't say anything. She just stood there, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. "Do you have anything to say?" I demanded. Carter, it's not what you think," she finally stammered. "I can explain." Those words, "I can explain," cut through me like a knife. I wanted to believe her. I wanted there to be an explanation that made sense, that didn't tear apart the foundation of everything we had built together. But deep down, I knew there wasn't. "Explain what?" I said, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. "Explain that you've been sneaking around behind my back? That you've been lying to me for months? Because whatever this is, Anna, it doesn't feel like something innocent. It doesn't feel like something you just stumbled into." I couldn't stop now. The words poured out of me like a flood I'd been holding back for too long. "I saw the messages, Anna, from DM. I saw the way you looked at him at the park. I saw you with him at the hotel. Don't you dare stand there and tell me it's not what I think." Her face crumpled, and she sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "Carter, I didn't mean for this to happen." "Didn't mean for what to happen, Anna? The lies? The sneaking around? The betrayal? Because all of that feels pretty damn deliberate to me." She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," she whispered. "What does that even mean?" My voice cracked, and I hated how weak it made me sound. She wiped her face with her sleeve and took a deep breath, like she was about to dive into cold water. "It started innocently. I swear it did. He's someone I met at the gym. We started talking after class one day, just casual stuff. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Casual?" I repeated, my tone dripping with disbelief. "Casual doesn't lead to hotel rooms, Anna." She winced. I know I messed up, okay? I was lonely, Carter. You're always working, always exhausted. I felt invisible, like I was just a part of the background in your life. Invisible. The word stung. So, your solution was to find someone else? To destroy everything we built because you felt ignored? Her tears came harder now, and she shook her head. It wasn't about destroying us. I never stopped loving you, Carter. I made a mistake. A huge, awful mistake, and I didn't know how to fix it. Fix it? I laughed bitterly. You didn't even try. Instead, you kept lying to my face day after day. Do you have any idea what that's done to me? To us. She reached out for my hand, but I stepped back, her touch feeling foreign now. Please, Carter, she begged. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Therapy, counseling, anything. Just don't give up on us. I stared at her, my heart pounding. This was the woman I had loved for over a decade. The woman I thought I'd grow old with. And now she felt like a stranger. A stranger who had broken something inside me that I wasn't sure could ever be repaired. I don't know if I can do this, Anna, I said quietly. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Her sobs filled the silence, but I didn't move to comfort her. I couldn't. Everything felt shattered, and I didn't know if there was any way to put the pieces back together. I slept in the guest room that night. Actually, I didn't sleep at all. My mind kept replaying the conversation, her tears, her excuses. Part of me wanted to believe her, to think this was something we could somehow overcome. But the other part, the louder part, kept telling me it was over. This morning, she left for work without saying much. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and she barely touched the coffee I made. I think she knows I'm not ready to talk yet. I'm still figuring out my next steps. Do I try to work through this? Can trust like this ever be rebuilt? Or is it better to just walk away and start over? Everywhere I look in this house, I see reminders of what we used to be. The pictures on the walls, the little notes she used to leave me, the life we built together. It's all there, staring at me like a cruel joke. I don't know what I'll do next, but one thing's for sure. Nothing will ever be the same again. For now, Anna and I are just existing in the same house. The air between us feels heavy, like we're both carrying the weight of everything that's happened but can't find the words to lighten the load. We haven't spoken much since that night. She keeps trying, though. She's left me notes on the kitchen counter. Simple apologies, promises to make things right, pleas for me to not give up on us. She sent me long texts while I'm at work, pouring out her guilt and her love. She even forwarded me a link to a couples counselor with a note that just said, "I'll go anytime you're ready," but I haven't responded to any of it. Honestly, I don't know what to say. How do you begin to respond to someone who's shattered your trust, your marriage, your entire sense of stability? Every time I try to think of the right words, they slip through my fingers like water. This weekend, I went for a drive to clear my head. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just needed to get out of the house, away from the silence, away from her. Somehow, I ended up at this little lake about an hour from our house. We used to come here all the time when we first started dating, back when life felt simpler, easier. Sitting there in the quiet, staring at the water, all I could think about was how happy we used to be. How the hell did we get here? I started scrolling through old photos on my phone, pictures of us hiking in the mountains, celebrating birthdays, laughing with friends at weddings. In every single one, we looked so in love. Or maybe I just thought we were. That's the part that hurts the most. Was any of it real? Was she already pulling away while I was holding on so tightly? Did she feel this sense of loneliness and invisibility she keeps talking about even back then? Or is that just her excuse now? I sat there for hours, replaying memories in my head, trying to figure out when everything changed. But the truth is, I don't know. I don't think I ever will. When I got back home, Anna was waiting for me. She was sitting at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had probably gone cold. Her eyes were red and puffy, like she'd been crying for hours. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to say no. I wanted to turn around and head back out the door to avoid this conversation for as long as possible. But something about the way she looked at me, so small, so broken, stopped me. So I sat down across from her, keeping the table between us like a buffer. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," she began. Her voice was shaky, but she held my gaze, even as her eyes filled with tears. "And I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. What I did was selfish, and I hurt you in ways I can't even imagine. But I need you to know that I'm so sorry." I didn't respond. I just stared at her, waiting for her to continue. She took a deep breath, like she was steadying herself. I cut off all contact with him. I deleted his number, blocked him on everything. I told him it's over, and I meant it. He doesn't mean anything to me, Carter. Not like you do. That's easy to say now. I finally said, my voice colder than I intended. But it didn't stop you before, did it? She flinched, but she didn't argue. You're right. I should have stopped it. I should have been honest with you from the beginning. But I let my insecurities and my loneliness get the better of me, and I made the worst mistake of my life. I let out a bitter laugh. Worst mistake of your life? Yeah, that sounds about right. You didn't just hurt me, Anna. You destroyed the one thing that held us together, trust. And I don't know if that's something we can ever rebuild. Her tears came again, but I didn't feel any satisfaction in making her cry. I just felt tired. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I hope, at least, you'll consider giving us a chance to fix this. I'll do whatever it takes, Carter. Therapy, transparency, whatever you need. Please don't give up on us. I stared at her for a long time, her words echoing in my head. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted to fight for the life we built together, to hold on to the good memories and pretend we could somehow go back to that. But another part of me, the part that had been crushed by her betrayal, wasn't so sure. That night, I slept in the guest room again. The house was so quiet it felt oppressive, like the weight of everything unsaid was pressing down on me. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with questions I didn't have the answers to. What if I stayed? Could I ever truly forgive her? Would I ever be able to look at her without seeing him, without hearing her lies echoing in my head? What if I left? Could I start over? Would I regret walking away from the life we built together? I spent most of the night replaying our conversation, her tears, her promises. I wanted to believe she was sincere. I wanted to believe she could change. But trust isn't something you can rebuild overnight, and I wasn't sure I had the strength to try. The next morning, she left for work without saying much. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and she barely touched the coffee I made. I think she knows I'm not ready to talk yet. I've been avoiding her texts and notes all day, even as I sit here writing this. I know I need to make a decision soon, for both of our sakes. We can't keep living in this limbo forever. I keep coming back to the same question. Can trust ever truly be rebuilt after something like this? Or is it better to cut your losses and start over, no matter how much it hurts? If you've been in my shoes, I'd really appreciate hearing your perspective. Right now, I feel like I'm standing at a crossroads and I don't know which path to take. Thanks for reading. I've spent the past week soul-searching, trying to figure out where I stand and what I want. It hasn't been easy, but I think I've finally made my decision. Anna's been doing everything she can to show me she's serious about making things right. She deleted her social media accounts, gave me full access to her phone, and even scheduled a couples counseling session that she went to alone when I didn't show up. She's apologized more times than I can count, and I can see how broken she is over what she's done. But as much as she's trying, it doesn't change what happened. It doesn't change how it's made me feel. I've been replaying our entire relationship in my head, from the day we met to that night at the park. I keep wondering if there were signs I missed, things I should have seen earlier. But honestly, none of that matters now. The reality is that the woman I trusted with my whole heart broke it, and I don't know if I can ever get past that. Trust is the foundation of any relationship. Without it, everything else crumbles. And no matter how hard I try, I can't rebuild that foundation in my mind. Every time she smiles at me, I wonder if it's real. Every time she leaves the house, I question where she's going. That's not a life I want to live. Last night, I told Anna how I felt. She was sitting on the couch, flipping through a book, but not really reading. I sat down across from her and said, "We need to talk." She closed the book slowly, her expression a mix of fear and resignation. "Okay," she said. I took a deep breath. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I've realized that I can't move forward with this. I've tried to picture us rebuilding, tried to imagine a future where I don't doubt everything you say or do. But I can't. The trust is gone, Anna. And without it, I don't think we have anything left. She didn't cry this time. She just nodded, her eyes glistening. I was afraid you'd say that, she whispered. I'm sorry, I said. And I meant it. I didn't want this. I never wanted this. I understand, she said after a long pause. I don't blame you. I hate myself for what I did, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. We sat there in silence for what felt like hours. Eventually, I got up and went to the guest room. This morning I called a lawyer. I'm going to file for divorce. It hurts. God, it hurts more than I ever thought it could. But I know it's the right thing for me. Staying in this marriage would only keep both of us trapped in a cycle of pain and mistrust. I've learned a lot from this experience about myself, about relationships, and about what I need in a partner. If I could go back and change anything, it would be to have confronted issues sooner instead of letting them fester. But hindsight is 20/20, right? So now I'm here, writing this as I pack up my things and prepare to move out. It's bittersweet, looking around at the life we built together and knowing it's coming to an end. But I also feel a strange sense of peace. I'm choosing myself, my happiness, and my future. If there's one piece of advice I'd give to anyone reading this, it's to trust your instincts. If something feels off in your relationship, don't ignore it. And if you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, remember that it's okay to walk away. So here's my question to you. Do you think trust can ever truly be rebuilt after a betrayal like this? Or do you believe some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for being here for me, and thanks for listening.